As growing up as a youngster on a reserve, my uncles on my mother's side were always ricers, and they always got ready. Probably start in the summertime, they'd start making their rice boat, and I don't know, and how long they'd last, but I seen two or three of them made just for racing, and I think they used them for checking their traps too during the trapping season. They used the boats for that, and the rice fields are probably almost big as this here, but somewhere not this size where they went. Not as big as this one here. And we never thought of the rice as like today, how expensive it is and hard to get. And back then we never give it a thought, because they'd come home with gunny sacks full of rice. And my uncle on my mother's side, her baby brother, he was never married. He was just a bachelor, and he lived back of our house in what he called his cabin, or what his house. It's just a little shack back there where and he had no stove in it or nothing, because he always ate at our house. That's where he ate. My mother took care of him that way. And he'd always bring rice home and deer meat. And my uncle, he made maple syrup, and we always had maple syrup from him. But yeah, we always had 2 or 3 bushels of rice in the corner or whatever. And when we wanted it, my mother would just go dip some out and start cooking. And we always had wild rice. And when they came back ricing, when they started to parch it, you could hear the ladies singing over there when they're parching the rice, steering the rice. And they'd sit there and chew their snuff or smoke their pipe. And they'd stir that rice when we got ready for the men to stomp it. They would sing songs all the time. I knew, never learned songs, but I remember them singing the songs. And, my uncles were keepers of the big drum on my mother's side. And my one uncle could sing. You could hear him singing all day. Never sing the same song over. But that's how many songs he knew. Because on that big drum, I think there's probably 120 songs you have to know before you even thought about it, them giving you a stick to sing on that drum. And so they kept us in the rice and deer meat, and in the winter time he'd cut wood for my mother, and so they kind of worked with each other, took care of each other, what they did. She made sure he was fed, and he made sure that she had food to cook. And on my father's side, they were Catholics. They didn't follow the traditional way of life. They were like farmers. They had chickens and pigs and that around their house where they lived. And they'd butcher their hogs in the fall. In the fall, they'd butcher their hogs, and they wanted a chicken dinner. They always had the chickens there for a Sunday dinner. I remember she would go out and catch an old rooster and chop his head off and hang him up, get ready for her to cook. I lived, kind of lived in two worlds. With I lived with my grandma a lot, and I lived at home a lot. But on my father's side, they lived, they were in church every Sunday, and I had nothing against that. But on my mother's side, they were Midday people, and my uncles, and they were in the big drum when they were at the feasts, and it was good to go to them. They kept you fed, and we were always invited in to eat. But they really never did, push their ways onto us. They never said, you learn this or you learn that, or here's a song you have to learn. Then when I left when I was 17 in 1952. I left home, joined the service, and I was gone for 5 or 6 years. And that during time I lost my mother and my father, and both my uncles on my mother's side, and I lost my grandma and my grandpa on my father's side. My dad passed on. Going back, there was nothing there. It was just a big void. And I always thought of, I wish I would have learned more from my both sets of grandparents. I wish I would have learned more. But as you grow up a young man, you want to move on. And my mother never did teach us the language. She said you go out and get a good education. Because when I joined the service, I had another year of high school to go, and she said, I'll sign you up if you finish your high school. And I said, I'll finish when I get in the service. And I did finish. I finished high school, and it was all right. Now I don't get back home that much. I got a brother living there yet, but we rarely see each other. And my home's in Michigan now. That's where my home is. But I go back and visit once in a while. And my sister married he's the rice chief from our reserve. He's the one that takes care of the rice fields. He's the one that tells them when it's ready to go and where to go and how much to take, and it's all regulated now. But I think they did have a rice chief when my uncles used to go out. I think his name was Jim Billaboy. I always remember them talking about him. They would go see him before they would go out. So, but we always had wild rice to eat, no problem. And I never really did get the teachings. I know my uncles knew it, because it's taught in the Midday Lodge about rice. And I never did get the teachings till I joined the lodge myself. That's where I got the teachings of wild rice. It was just another food that was around when I was growing up. You?
Bonjour, Syd Martin, Ogimakwe, and Disnikas, Mingan Dodam. In talking about wild rice, I must say that I didn't know anything about wild rice growing up, but we had it, always had it in the house. And I now know that my mom and my grandpa, Sam Pigeon, and my uncles, who were great hunters and trappers year-round, they would even trap up in the Upper Peninsula and northern Michigan and They always used to travel around, and my grandpa was an itinerant minister, so he would go to every community in Michigan and have camp meetings or revivals or whatever those gatherings were for a week on end, and would always come back with wild rice every time. That was a major gift to him for coming, would be gifts of wild rice when he went to northern Michigan and up into the Upper Peninsula. And I used to go, well, my mom and I used to go on trips with him on some of those trips up there, and we would, to get to the Upper Peninsula, we would have to take a ferry boat across the straits. That was before the bridge was built. So going to the Upper Peninsula and coming back were great big adventures for me, to get to ride on the big boat and come home with trunks. Our trunk was full of rice every time we would come back, and we'd have enough to last us for probably a year till we went back again. And we had a root cellar, so that's where we would keep it, and had it all of the time. It was a staple. And in fact, it was so common for us at breakfast or at supper that it was so commonplace that we didn't even offer it to company when they came, because it was just considered too not fancy enough for our company to come. They would get potatoes and meat, or macaronis and soups. But I do know that the uncles and my grandpa did trade. They traded a lot of their hunting and fishing and trapping trophies for other things when they went out and visiting communities and places as well. So we got a lot of food that way, and we got a lot of our baskets that way, and we got black ash logs that way, and we got whatever people could trade with each other is how we did that business a long time ago. And the wild rice that my mom would make, we would pack in little muffin tins and let the rice harden in there, and then she'd take it out and we could eat it in the car, without a refrigerator or ice. It was something that we could pack to munch on as we drive along, and wouldn't have to go into a restaurant like they do nowadays and eat. We could just make our little meal lunches that way, and it was always the wild rice that we would have to nourish us and to sustain us till we got to our place we were going. And sometimes it took 2 or 3 days to get there, but it was always the wild rice that I remember that we counted on to be there to help us travel. And I wish now that I would have learned how to make that, what I call wild rice cake, because I remember it being different tasting almost all of the time, either with probably syrup or berries, or maybe meta another time, maybe some kind of leftover gravy another time. So it was always different, but it was always wild rice, and you could taste that it was wild rice. So again, it was a common food around all the time. We never thought it was special. We never had to buy it. All the Indians would have it in one form or another at some time or another, and it's just considered a nourishment for us. And now I know that it's not only for our bodies, but for our spirit needs to have that rice as well to make us stronger Anishinaabe people. So therefore, we don't think of it as a commodity anymore. Now that I know better, I consider it almost a honor to be eating any kind of wild rice anywhere I go, because everyone is different and every taste is different, and every hand that prepared it is different. It's some of it you can taste where those old grandmas made it. It was always better than when the young people made it, and you could tell because it wasn't hurried or rushed, or it was made with a lot of patience and love. So that's that lesson there. That's how you should prepare any kind of food. Really, it's with that kind of honoring to place that care and tenderness into that preparing of our foods that we eat. And I know in our Medewan Lodge, that's a great teaching in that. That's how we're supposed to take care of our lives every day, whether you're brushing your teeth or combing your hair. You should do that with, respect and care and love for what we have, what Creator has given us. And so we're considering that the wild rice is especially our greatest food that we could have, because we were led here to this Great Lakes because of that. And we all know how we all treasure and love the Great Lakes because of the water, the food that grows here, like this wonderful place back of me. And it would be just a terrible, terrible loss to us as Anishinaabe people if anything were to happen to this wonderful lake right here. I don't like to worry about that because I don't like dwelling on that thought that something might happen to it, but I guess realistically we should face that fact that something could happen someday to make it disappear. With the environment and Mother Earth being destroyed daily, we just have to become more warrior-like in protecting the things that we need to have. And our voices and our actions need to start educating others around us about it, and to get them to have a stronger urge to be involved. We need to protect our water and our rice, and we need to protect our Mother Earth, and we need to protect ourselves. So I guess that would be the most important message that I have for this visit, is that we need to be warriors for what we have. It means something to us as much as wild rice means to us. Oh, miigwech.
Go ahead.
Those acorns are going nuts.
Rain acorn.
Why is that? Why is